Hello and welcome to the Art of Reflection, where we explore philosophy through stories that bring ideas to life. In today's episode, we're stepping back in time to ancient Greece. Picture yourself walking the bustling streets of Athens, meeting three of the greatest minds in history, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. You'll learn their teachings firsthand, and along the way, you'll experience their profound influence on the world of philosophy. So step into the sandals of an ancient Athenian, let's walk the streets and see what these thinkers have to say about justice, virtue, and the meaning of life. It's early morning in Athens. The sun rises over the city, casting a warm glow on the building of the Agora, the heart of public life. You wake up in your simple home, perhaps a modest stone or clay house, and step out into the world. The air smells of fresh bread and olive oil, and the sound of street vendors calling their wares fill the air. You grab some bread, olives, and a small sip of watered-down wine to start your day. As you walk towards the Agora, you're already thinking about the big questions: justice, virtue, the purpose of life, and who better to ask than the philosophers who walk these very streets? You approach the Agora, and in the middle of the bustling crowd, you spot Socrates, standing with a few Athenians. He's speaking, but his voice is calm, as if inviting all to join the discussion. Socrates, noticing you approach with a slight smile, "Ah, a newcomer. I have a question for you. What is justice?" You blink, caught off guard by the directness of the question. The group around him quiets, watching expectantly. Socrates, leaning in slightly, "Tell me, do you think justice is merely obeying the laws of Athens? Is it as simple as following the rules?" You hesitate, then respond cautiously, "Well, yes, I suppose it's about following the laws." Socrates, nodding thoughtfully, But what if the law itself is unjust? Can you think of a situation where following the law would not be just?" You frown, unsure where he is going with this. "Perhaps, but it would be difficult to disobey the law." Socrates, smiling gently, "Of course, it's not an easy thing to question the law, but think for a moment. If someone follows the law only because it's a law, do they truly act justly, or are they simply acting out of fear of punishment or a desire for reward?" You pause, considering his words. "I suppose they might just be acting out of self-interest then?" Socrates' eyes with bright interest. "Aha, exactly. So, can we say that a person who obeys only out of self-interest is just? Or is true justice something deeper, something that comes from within, from the soul?" You feel a shift in the conversation and think for a moment. Maybe justice isn't about following laws. It could be about something inside us, about how we live our lives? Socrates, nodding. Yes, you're getting closer. Justice isn't merely about outward actions. It's about how we align our inner selves. A just person, you see, is one whose soul is in harmony, where reason governs the passions. They act not because they fear consequences, but because it's the right thing to do, guided by wisdom. He turns to one of his students and gestures to him to consider this. Socrates is now turning back to you. "Now tell me, what happens to the soul of a person who lives unjustly, who lets desire and passion rule them?" "I suppose their soul would be troubled, disordered?" Socrates, leaning even closer. "Exactly. A soul that is ruled by desire rather than reason is like a ship without a captain. It will be tossed about by the winds. True justice comes from within, from a life led by wisdom. The just person doesn't simply follow the law, they live in harmony with virtue and reason." You start to understand where he's getting at, and the weight of the conversation settles on you. Socrates is smiling kindly. "So, do you still think justice is simply following the laws of the land? Or do you come to see it as something more, something that guides our very souls?" You take a deep breath, now fully engaged in the dialogue. "I think justice is more than laws. It's about living a virtuous life, with reason at the helm." Socrates is grinning now. Ah, that's a fine answer. You see, justice is not something we merely do, it's something we are. It comes from a well-ordered soul. Now tell me, how do you intend to live justly from this point forward? The crowd waits quietly as you reflect on the question, realizing that Socrates has not given you an answer, but led you to find one yourself. You part ways with Socrates, and after a long walk, you find yourself at the Academy, Plato's famous school. The shade of olive trees provides a cool respite as you approach, and you see Plato sitting among his students, teaching them about the nature of reality. Plato's noticing you approach. Ah, welcome, you're just in time. We're discussing the concept of the forms. Tell me, do you believe that the world we see is the true reality? You sit down and listen carefully as Plato continues. In our everyday lives, we only see the imperfect copies of the true perfect forms. Take a chair, for example. What we call a chair is just an imperfect representation of the perfect form of chairness. The true chair, the perfect form, exists in a world beyond our senses, a world of pure, unchanging ideas. You're beginning to see how Plato's philosophy differs from Socrates. While Socrates sought to understand the soul through dialogue, Plato posited a world of ideal forms that transcended the physical world. Plato, gesturing to a nearby flower, the flower you see before you, like the chair, is but a shadow of its perfect form. The true flower exists not here in the material world, but in a higher, unchanging realm of perfect ideas. Everything we perceive with our senses is merely a reflection of the true reality. He leans in, eyes full of passion. Knowledge is not found by simply observing the world. True knowledge comes from understanding the forms, from seeing beyond the material world and contemplating the eternal perfect ideas. That is the true purpose of philosophy, to bring us closer to the forms. You're entranced by his words. Plato's world of forms challenges the reality you know. The material world is just a fleeting illusion, and only by grasping the eternal forms can you achieve true knowledge. As you continue your walk through Athens, contemplating about the reality you know is actually reality or just an illusion, you find your way to the Lyceum, the school founded by Aristotle. Unlike Plato's academy, the Lyceum is a place of study grounded in the physical world, where Aristotle seeks to understand nature through observation and reasoning. As you approach, you see Aristotle discussing ethics with a group of his students. He notices you and waves you over. Welcome, welcome! Today we're discussing the nature of virtue. Tell me, what is the good life? You sit down as Aristotle begins to explain. Unlike Plato, who focused on ideal forms, I believe that true knowledge comes from the world around us, from observation and experience. Virtue, for example, is not some abstract idea. It's about living in accordance with reason and harmony with our nature as human beings. He gestures to his students who are practicing a variety of physical and intellectual activities. Virtue is a state of character that allows us to live well. It's about finding the balance between extremes, middle ground. For instance, courage lies between the extremes of recklessness and cowardice. Generosity lies between prodigality and stinginess. The virtuous person knows how to act in the right way at the right time, with the right intention. He pauses to ensure you're following. Virtue is cultivated through practice. It's not enough to know what's good. You must act according to that knowledge. The goal of life is not to seek pleasure or wealth, but to live a life of reason, to live virtuously. By doing so, you fulfill your purpose, your telos, which is to live a life that reflects your true nature as a rational being. As he speaks, you realize how practical Aristotle's philosophy is. Unlike the ideas of Plato, Aristotle's ethics are grounded in real life, in everyday actions. To live a virtuous life is to actively cultivate good habits and strive for balance and reason in all things. The sun is beginning to set as you walk through the now quieter streets of Athens, the lessons of the day fresh in your mind. Socrates challenged your understanding of justice and knowledge. Plato showed you a higher, ideal reality, and Aristotle gave you practical wisdom for living a good life. You realize that each philosopher has a different way of approaching truth, but they all share a common goal: to help us live better lives. Socrates asks us to question everything and seek wisdom. Plato urges us to see beyond the material world. And Aristotle teaches us to live a life of virtue in harmony with reason. As you walk back through the city, you reflect on the deep ideas you've encountered today. You've been given a glimpse into the minds of history's greatest philosophers, ideas that continue to shape the way we think about justice, virtue, and the very meaning of life. Thank you for joining me on this journey through ancient Greece. I hope you enjoyed meeting Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle and have gained a deeper understanding of their philosophies. If you'd like to dive further into these ideas or explore more practical topics, be sure to follow Art of Reflection for future episodes. And as always, keep reflecting, keep questioning, and stay curious.